welcome to Rising Up. So before we jump in some questions, I know pretty much everybody knows you, but for those of you who don't,
many people don't know.
Yeah, okay. So for them, would you like to do a little introduction and?
Sure. My name's Marc Anderson. I'm the president of Simpraxis Consulting. We're a virtual organization, but sort of roughly based in New England in the US. We work in Microsoft 365, SharePoint. Most of us have been working with SharePoint for way longer than some of us even think we should admit. But we love what we do, and we do consulting projects and mostly project-based work, help people use the platform as best they can to accomplish their goals.
Yeah, you've been working with SharePoint for quite some time. We already touched on that. What impresses you in terms of like where it started and where it is right now? What's kind of like this thing that like really strikes you and like how it evolved over all those years?
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason SharePoint really took off in the beginning is people started building SharePoint servers under their desk. I mean, they really did build SharePoint servers under their desk. That was not the right place for them, but that's what happened, and it was for those days relatively easy to set up, but also very hard to manage.
Yeah.
So as organizations started using it more and more and more, it's sort of like all the mistakes came out.
Yeah.
And the development that people did the code had to go onto that server, and so there were just a lot of ways to shoot yourself in the foot. And flash forward to today, where most people are now using SharePoint in SharePoint Online in Microsoft 365, so in the cloud. And there's, Microsoft has realized that running a cloud service or running a SharePoint server, for that matter, is harder than they wanted it to be. So they put more sort of railings around it.
Yeah.
There are only certain things that you can do to customize what's there. But at the same time, they've modernized the user interface. They've really thought about the user experience.
Yeah.
They've come out with all the Viva applications around. They're part of Microsoft 365. They don't really sit in SharePoint, but they can be displayed in SharePoint or connected. I know they're all in Teams, but SharePoint has really become almost like the back-end repository for a lot of other things in Microsoft 365. I think SharePoint's going to be in there somewhere for years.
Yeah.
I mean, people say people used to say, well, when is SharePoint dead, or is SharePoint dead?
Yeah,
and it's like, it's never going to die. It's too important. It's where we put our stuff.
Yeah. Unless they release something completely game-changing that just replaces it, but. It's probably going to be leveraging SharePoint at some point.
Well, and as a cloud service, it will evolve. If that brand name goes away,
it's still going to be there.
Yeah, I mean, stuff from it will be there. So I think it's got a long life ahead of it.
Yeah. Now we've talked about how SharePoint evolved over the years. Where do you see itself continuing to grow, and what place do you see it kind of like taking in Microsoft 365 moving forward?
I think there's still a really strong need in most organizations for something that's called an intranet. Now, you don't have to call it intranet, you can give it a different name, but a place to communicate from small numbers of people into the rest of the organization. Any organization of an appreciable size will need that. To me, SharePoint is the place for that. Even if we display it in Teams or some other way, that's a great place to store it. Right, you build it there. So I think that that's going to be around for a good long time. I think the services that SharePoint offers to the other services. SharePoint is now becoming a repository for videos, for example, with Classic Stream moving into Stream in SharePoint. So I think that those disparate uses of SharePoint will continue, and like I said, maybe SharePoint as a brand goes away, but that doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
We'll still be building pages. We'll still be building libraries. We'll still be building lists, even if they're decoupled, like Microsoft Lists did.
Right.
The stuff is still going into a SharePoint-like repo in the back end.
Yeah. So it's going to take more and more kind of like a backstage kind of.
Well, maybe. I don't know. It sort of comes and goes from that. I think it's an incredibly valuable brand for Microsoft. To just kill it for no good reason. I mean, they've certainly done things like that before for reasons we never understand. but I think it'll be there for a while.
For a while, yeah. What do you see, and like talking about a little bit more about your customers, what do you see your most successful customers doing as opposed to your less successful customers doing? Are there like any things you see them do that others aren't doing?
Well, I think it's back to that maturity level thing, right? So, I first got to know ShareGate because I was migrating content from one version of SharePoint to the next, all on-prem. Right?
Yeah.
So it was really more of a technical upgrade, but Praxis tried to make it a reorganization of that content.
At the same time.
Don't ever just lift up I always say it this way, it's not really all that appropriate, but I'll do it anyway. Don't lift up the pile of poo that you have today and drop that pile of poo in the new place, right?
Yeah.
Sift through it and figure out what you really need to keep and how it should be organized. You must have learned something since the last time you did that process. So, we use ShareGate to migrate content into SharePoint. So that was one exercise. Now we've got a bunch of content in SharePoint, but we may not have done as good a job as we could, and your business continues to change over time.
Yeah.
So anything you do has to evolve. Anything that you implement should never be considered done. It should never be considered right, which is a hard thing for people to understand because they want a project to begin and end.
Yeah.
But to me, every time you move something into SharePoint, it's an ongoing evolutionary process. So you should always be thinking about, well, what's changing in our organization? How can we support things better? What can we automate? What do we still need to do manually? What should we monitor?
Yeah.
Again, maturity level stuff says once you start to monitor things and learn from it and actually react to the things that are going well or not going well, you're at a higher level of maturity than, we just put all of our stuff into SharePoint and there's no magic happening.
Yeah.
We still have clients, and I hate to say things that they can hear, but should they watch the video, we still have clients who just take documents and dump them into SharePoint into a bunch of folders.
So it's like a file share in Microsoft 365.
Yeah, except that it's a little harder to use because it's in the cloud.
Yeah.
So they don't gain anything from the platform, and then they don't see the value in the platform when they could really be looking at how can we use this to transform the way we do our work. To me, a successful implementation in SharePoint or any other technology for that matter is one that transforms some things in a positive way.
Yeah.
That makes us better at what we do.
Yeah. So it's really a mindset to approach and always be improving.
Yeah, it's a commitment and an investment kind of mindset that sometimes people find difficult to do. You can't just change something and then sort of walk away from that change and expect that it will continue to get better.
Yeah, because then when you're going to get back to it, it's not going to be working anymore, or you just fell behind.
Or you run into security problems, or people abandon it and start doing something else, or lots of bad things can happen if you don't continue to look at it. The other part of an answer there would be that the most successful organizations I see using SharePoint and Microsoft 365 are the ones that put a concerted effort internally into some sort of consultative service.
Okay.
By that, I mean, if somebody needs to do something in the platform, they have somebody they can go to talk it through.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that they're going to do it for them.
Yeah.
But they have resources, right? And so there are people dedicated, even if it's just part of their time. It's not the help desk, because that's really not their job.
No.
The help desk has fire extinguishers. We're talking about people with hammers and all the carpentry tools, right? And so they can come to those people and say, I've got this project and I want to get better at, you name it, managing our tasks, or putting documents through a workflow, or understanding who's doing what part of a process. How can we implement that in SharePoint and do a good job?
Yeah.
And they get some ideas and some support. And that's where citizen development can really shine, because you've given them some support and you've given them some guidance and some help. They go and they build what they need. And then IT is not against that or in the way. They're actually supporting and saying, oh, that's good, but did you try this?
Yeah.
Or you've been using this for a good long time. Let's turn this into a more hardened solution because it would be good for other people as well.
Yeah, true.
All that sort of stuff. So those to me are some of the recipes for success.
Yeah. Cool. Basically today with like a plethora of tools that end users can just like turn around to and actually use. We're talking Dropbox and whatever, and we've talked about this for a while. But how do you think that IT leaders and IT teams can actually leverage SharePoint to actually compete against those other solutions that are out there? What would be some tips or pointers you would give to those IT teams who are essentially kind of competing to some extent to those solutions?
Well, it's interesting because I think Microsoft tries to react to those other usages on a regular basis.
Yeah.
You know, Dropbox does this, so then Microsoft comes along and comes up with, like for instance, in OneDrive, there's a capability to request files from an outside party, and it just gives them a place to sort of drop them, right?
Yeah.
It's much like what Dropbox tends to get used for. So the Microsoft 365 platform has answers to a lot of the reasons that people to go to use these other tools, and managing all of having all those outside tools raises security concerns. It's inconsistent. It makes it harder for a new person to know what's going on. I mean, there are a lot of reasons why it's bad. Yeah. It's not just because they're not doing what IT said. You know. I mean, it just becomes impractical after a while. So I think understanding where in the Microsoft 365 or SharePoint world those competitive matches are is part of what IT ought to be focusing on. If they have that consultative capability and someone comes to them and it's like, well, I need a place for people to drop files from externally so that we can use them for our team. Just because they said drop doesn't mean Dropbox, right? Let's come up with the solution that Microsoft 365 has already given us. We already know how to manage identity there. We already know who's part of that team. We can build a process around it with some of the other tools. So we can actually give them a better answer as opposed to just fighting with them about what they want to use. So I think that sort of understanding of the breadth of the platform is incumbent on IT, and it's not easy.
No.
You know, you have a bunch of MVPs visiting today. All of us together don't know everything about what SharePoint does. We just don't. I mean, all of it's too big. Not just SharePoint, but think about how big Microsoft 365 is. But you need to do some research. You need to be a part of the community. You need to do a lot of reading. If you're putting out fires all the time, you can't do that. You need to leverage tool sets so that you stop putting out the fires so that you have the time to be that consultative resource. Do a little research, do a little bit of reading, all that sort of stuff.
Being able to get your hands in the projects and show them, because basically the user are going to go like the path of least resistance, I guess. Show them that there are other easy paths.
Those end users are not evil people. They're actually trying to get their jobs done. You know, and it's too often the attitude that, well, they're going to go and they're going to do something, you know? And it's like, well, they're going to do what gets their job done. And then they'll be rewarded by their bosses. And, you know, everybody's in the same boat. We all work for the same company. We all, whatever that company is. And we're all trying to solve the problems that we have. And why not work together on it? You know, I feel it's a little Pollyanna-ish, but I mean, these sort of barriers that larger organizations put up are so counterproductive to getting things finished.
With all this being said, what do you think are kind of the main, I guess, added values for IT leaders to use a solution like ShareGate, for instance, when it comes to using and managing SharePoint?
I think it helps bring some order to the chaos. Right, you get a better handle on what you have and how it's being used and how to manage it. You can also be more proactive. You can spot problems if they're out there. You know, like a document library that's gotten way big. There must be something going on there we don't know about. If you don't have enough owners for a site, you know, just simple stuff like that can be indicators of upcoming problems. So if you've got your early warning systems in place using tools like ShareGate, you know, you can run reports, you can set rules, you can You can even ship those reports to the site owners themselves so that they understand that something's...
Delegate it a little bit.
Yeah, and delegate, and well, really you're helping them,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
You're giving them better information in order to make better decisions, which is really a service to them that I think works
that's
really
true.
well. So you know, you're reducing friction, you're increasing predictability, you're increasing stability. How can anyone say that's bad stuff?
Yeah.
You know,
Allowing
it's
you
got
to-
to be seen as a good thing.
Yeah, and then allowing you to work on the more kind of what we were
Yeah.
referring to. We were talking
Like-
about just the being more the consultants within your business,
Right.
Being, a little bit
And
more involved.
automating things that need to be automating and really adding value added solutions that support the strategy. I mean, how many IT people have you ever talked to who know what the strategy is, much less are like actively working on stuff that supports it?
Yeah,
It's because they're too busy. They're too busy running around or dealing with fires, or you know the help desk is lighting up too much.
Yeah.
Or, you know, who hands the help desk people the fire extinguisher?
Well, thanks a lot, Marc, for sitting down with me and coming over to visit us in Montreal.
It's so nice to be here in person, seeing you guys again.
We should do this again.
Let's do it more often.
So we're sitting. That's the concept. We're sitting one in front of each other,
Yeah.
but we both need to look at our camera.
Do we?
No.